This prototype solution offers to give donors to international development projects validation that their money is being well spent, and by exposing them directly to beneficiaries in remote rural villages, a better understanding of the issues through direct contact. Once the decision of donation is to be made, Village by Village site validates payment through a smart contract using blockchain, which I'll explain later in more detail. The donor selects one of the predetermined date and time slots for the augmented reality VR project visits. This is confirmed by email to both the donor and the in-country staff. The donor is also sent a translation earpiece and low-cost VR viewer, which is used with their own smartphone.
Okay, so I've got the headset on now, and I'm just going to get my phone, which is already connected to the guys in Ghana. I'm going to slip it in the front there like that, put the lid over like that, press it down, and that's it. I can see a school building. It looks like a school building. This is Aikens. Hi Aikens, I'm Anna. How are you? Delighted to be able to talk to you today and to see the project firsthand. Maybe you'd show me around the site. Is there any chance that I could talk to some of the children? And how many weeks have you been working on this now?
This solution heavily relies on a digital contract that works on top of a secure, distributed public ledger, which I will now explain. I've speeded up the commentary for expediency.
So we need to define our terms and understandings. So to coin the phrases, two basic terms are blockchain and Bitcoin. Now these are different. Bitcoin is money, digital money, and I'm not going to talk about Bitcoin, I'm going to talk about blockchain. So blockchain is about moving digital coins and assets from one individual to another individual. Paul wants to transfer money to Anna from the UK to Ghana. This is normally done by a trusted third party. The third party identifies Paul in the UK as a person with a bank account, then moves the money to Anna and her account in Ghana. This normally takes about 3 to 5 days, and the trusted third party will charge a percentage. So what blockchain is trying to change is to do the transfer without a trusted third party, instantaneously allowing people to contact each other directly. So with this network group of people, we want to move money from Paul to Anna. Paul has got £10 and he wants to move £5 to Anna. The first concept is the open ledger. This is a way which is blockchain works and is publicly viewed. First transaction is to ensure that Paul has £10, and that transaction's there in the open ledger. We add another transaction, which is Paul wants to give Anna £5. So that is a separate transaction. But with the open ledger, these two are linked together. Let's imagine Anna wants to move £3 to Brendan. We have to add another transaction. Anna moves £3 to Brendan. And again, that's contained and linked inside the open ledger. Brendan wants to move to Aikens £1. And we add this to the growing chain of transactions. So Brendan moves to Aikens £1. And it grows another transaction in the chain. So now we have a link of these various transactions that are open, and it forms a chain, hence the name blockchain. Everyone can see the transactions. So if Paul now decides he wants to try and transfer £15 from himself to Aikens, everybody on the network can now see immediately that isn't a transaction that can be validated. So this shows the first concept of blockchain, a open ledger of transactions. But then the second part of blockchain is to decentralize this database. So each node is now going to be distributed with this information. So to distribute the ledger, Brendan can have a copy of the ledger, and so can Paul. And in turn, each of the nodes has their own copy. And anybody else who joins the network can also hold the list of transactions, the open ledger. Ledger being distributed amongst all the nodes, we've in effect got away without having a centralised ledger. We've solved one problem by distributing the centralised ledger and getting rid of the third party, but we've also created an additional problem, is how can we keep all these different copies synchronised across all the nodes of the network. Anna wants to transfer to Aikens £2. She advertises and publishes the fact that she's moving £5 from Anna to Aikens, but at the moment that's an unvalidated transaction. So Anna has published her intent to send the money, but because it's not yet validated, we need to look at the idea of miners. So miners are specialists on the network who hold the ledger. So let's say, for argument's sake, Brendan and Paul are miners. So our miners now compete against each other to be the first one to validate this transaction. The first miner to do that will get a financial reward, and that will be a Bitcoin. So to validate Anna's transaction, they need to do two things. The first one is straightforward to check, and it's easy to find out if Anna has the money to do the transaction. And the second one is to find a special key. The key is random, and it needs time and computing power to be able to unlock the transaction, which will then allow you to add it into the blockchain. So the miners will search randomly and repeatedly until they find the correct key. The first one to do that will get the financial reward. So Brendan, the miner, has managed to find the validated key and checked that Anna has the money because it's an open ledger. And once Brendan has found the key, so he can now validate this transaction, and because he's found the key, he can link it into the existing open ledger and then publish it to all the nodes in the connected network. Once published, Paul will realise that there's no reason mining a solution or a key for this transaction, and will instantaneously add it to his ledger because it's been validated, and now we'll start looking for another transaction he can validate and find the key, because there's no longer a financial reward for finding the key for the transaction between Aikens and Anna. Taking this a step further, we can add conditions and deterministic clauses. So to one contract you can add in the clauses for receipt of visual confirmation that the project that you're supporting has been funded. So at a stage where you've received a number of these clauses, a deterministic smart contract can be formed, and that can be a guarantee that the work you've commissioned will take place. The blockchain is different from Bitcoin. The blockchain is a public open ledger with many nodes on a connected network. Because it's public and distributed, there's no central database, and to validate and publish the new transactions in the open ledger, you have miners who get a financial reward every time they found that key. And once they find that key, they can validate that transaction, and then they publish it, and the other miners in the network move on to find the next key for the next transaction, and at the same time update their ledger.
In summary, the ultimate goal of this prototype is to bring donors and beneficiaries closer together and working with understanding of their real issues facing people who live in developing nations. The charity Village by Village could implement this prototype for a range of different problems and situations, ranging from large capital donations to small one-off donations. Ultimately, the success or failure of this method will be down to the wide-scale adoption of blockchain. Thank you for your time.